Putin news now. The Wagner Mutiny has opened the floodgates to challenge Putin. Just days after fending off the biggest threat to his leadership in 23 years, Vladimir Putin gave a speech in which he attempted to strike a defiant tone. Russian President Vladimir Putin referred to the armed convoy of thousands of Russian soldiers led by Wagner mercenary boss Yevgeny Prigozhin as a mutiny, and its organizers as plotters who betrayed their country and their people. But Putin did not reveal any plans for punishment or retribution, surprising even the most astute Kremlinologists. Instead, he painted the vast majority of participants as misguided patriots and declared that Prigozhin and his men were free to seek asylum in Belarus, Russia's vassal state to the west. According to prominent Kremlin critic Bill Browder, Putin is deviating from his usual playbook. He is in the best position to know. Over the course of a decade, the London-based financier exposed corruption and human rights abuses in Russia, eventually leading to the passage of the Magnitsky Act in 2012, which allowed the United States and other countries to freeze the assets and ban the visas of human rights violators in Russia. In 2005, Moscow labeled Browder a threat to Russian national security, and he has since seen friends and colleagues imprisoned and even killed for their activism. Recent events include the treason conviction of Vladimir Kara-Murza, a close friend of Browder's, and his subsequent sentence to 25 years in a penal colony. His true crime is that he is the most feared political prisoner by Putin. In a phone interview with Time, Browder explains how Putin's image has changed since the failed Wagner Mutiny and what the future holds for Russia's longest-serving leader. When Prigozhin decided to turn his forces around, they were only 124 miles from Moscow. Is there anything we can infer about Putin's popularity in Russia prior to the uprising from this? Was he really as powerful an autocrat as everyone thought? Browder, Bill Putin has attempted to portray himself as an all-powerful dictator, but there has been no way to verify this from the outside of Russia. Opinion polls are meaningless and public expression of any kind is strictly prohibited. So many people in Russia, including ourselves, have been under the impression that he has absolute power. Then, all of a sudden, on Saturday, we see that a small band of armed marauders was able to sneak across the border into Russian territory without any resistance, enter the city of Rostov, where they were not only unopposed but people came out on the street to welcome them, and eventually seize control of one of the country's most vital strategic military bases. That proves, once and for all, that Putin's public persona is an act. The same thing occurred in Voronezh as Prigozhin approached the city. Then he boarded a highway bound for Moscow and left. And the only reason he didn't make it all the way there was because 8,000 men can't take over a country of 141 million people unless they have co-conspirators, and I think he probably thought he did, and it was probably pre-arranged, and those people got cold feet when the situation escalated to that point. Putin faces a formidable challenge here, the likes of which he hasn't faced since he first took office. He risks losing his power and his life if people stop thinking of him as a ruthless strongman. Despite having done much worse to critics who have done much less, Putin appears to have let Prigozhin go. So, what do you think causes that? Vladimir Kara-Murza was sentenced to 25 years in prison by Putin for speaking out against abuses of human rights in Russia. It's out of character to have a real rebellious traitor and let him go free. Russia's leader Putin seems too lenient. For two primary factors. One of them is that, among all of Russia's fighters, Prigozhin is the best. He's cold-blooded, ruthless, and capable of bringing Putin and his family unimaginable misery. Both Putin and Prigozhin have equal reason to fear one another. The second is that Prigozhin has not diminished in importance in Russia. Yevgeny Prigozhin emerged as the sole competent military operator in Russia, which is saying a lot given the country's general level of incompetence. He is in charge of 17 other military operations in Africa for either the Kremlin or his mercenary group, and he is the only person the Ukrainians respected on the battlefield. Prigozhin is crucial to Russia's foreign policy, so his arrest would send the wrong message. Exactly how has this incident damaged Putin's reputation in Russia? His reputation has been irreparably damaged. Russia is reminiscent of a jail yard. It's predicated on ruthlessness and esteem. Putin's early presidency was marked by a degree of brutality and ruthlessness that would come to define him as president and would prove instrumental in his ability to maintain power in Russia, a country where doing so is notoriously difficult. He was said to have boarded his plane and fled Moscow. Prigozhin ran unopposed, and Putin let him off the hook afterwards, all of which paint Putin as a truly weak leader in a country where weakness is despised. Putin's weakened position is sure to make him more vulnerable to new threats. What do you think Putin's future holds in light of all this? To be honest, I have no idea. There are numerous influencing factors. The Ukrainian military will benefit greatly once Prigozhin is removed from the equation. Due to the vast expanses of defenseless Russian territory, the country's military must be spread thin in order to cover the entire country. The fact that Russian internal strife increases with each Ukrainian victory is a boon to the Ukrainian cause. Now that Prigozhin has been shown the door, anyone can challenge Putin. There is unfathomable wealth waiting for someone to fill Putin's shoes. This provides a substantial incentive for many people to engage in such behavior. Putin can still redeem himself, but only by launching a massive purge like we haven't seen since Stalin's time. And I think that's what he's going to do, though whether or not he actually does it is another question. According to the terms of the agreement that convinced him to abandon his advance on Moscow, Prigozhin has relocated to Belarus. Is he going to be okay there? Or should we anticipate his fate to mirror that of Putin's previous opponents? Everyone agrees that Prigozhin has reason to be concerned. Putin, in my opinion, has more reason to be concerned about Prigozhin than the other way around. Prigozhin is a professional assassin with a cold heart. Putin is the type to stay in his underground lair.